My name is Mike Miller. I'm one of the co-chairs of your ministerial search committee, and this.
And I'm Lori Albright. I'm the other co-chair for your search committee. We are here today to alert you to watch your email inbox for the search survey. You may remember last year we did a strategic planning survey and process. This is similar, but it has a different purpose and different questions. We also want you to know, get ready, because it takes about 30 minutes to complete. Mike, what were we thinking?
Well, our goal is first to learn what we need to about our congregation so we can tell ministerial candidates who we are and what's important to us. It's also our goal to engage you all in the search process. So we're inviting you, either as individuals or families or households, to sit down together and respond to the survey. Have a spirited conversation, make an event out of it, and tell us who you are and what's important to you about the congregation.
So, how many congregants does it take to complete the search process? All of us.
As long as people have been talking to each other, we've been trying to find out what's the best way to live. Today, we let our chalice and honor the search for truth and meaning. Hi, today we're talking about ancient and modern ways of being, questions of what is best, what is just, and what do people deserve. There'll be music by the choir, and Dr. Georgia will talk about John Lewis and his evolution from a young man to a great wise statesperson. So join us for service today. I hope you learn something. I hope you find something inspiring and something that challenges you. Come on in.
All the beauty in a life that illumines honor anew, that models wise and gracious ways to every seeker, that every day shall serve with joy and through the right. Oh, praise the life whose beauty shows that justice true. Let the service of the good be confined to great saints alone, but every hour is part of all our daily living. Set not the hope of Christ's grace beyond your head. Along the path of close the Lord shall be shown. Oh, the beauty of a life that illumines care of the soul, that loves the love that is for self as well as others, that every day embodies praise for every good, that is a path through which we turn our onward goal.
Every week when we gathered, we took time for what we call joys and concerns, where people had a chance to come here before service and light a candle in silence, or to write in our book and have their joy or sorrow read with the congregation and put a pebble in the water. We can't do that right now, but I'm thinking about all of you. I know there are several joys in our community. For that, I'm grateful. I also know there are difficult times for people, and people have sorrow. And and that sorrow deserves support and care. For all these things, and lastly, for gratitude for us being together, I light our candles. Please join me in the Unison Reading by Tad Williams from the novel To Green Angel Tower. We tell lies when we are afraid of what we don't know, afraid of what others will think, afraid of what will be found out about us. But every time we tell a lie, the thing that we fear grows stronger.
The 5th Congressional District for the state of Georgia is no longer represented in Congress. John Lewis, who had occupied that seat since 1987, passed away, and his seat has yet to be filled. John Lewis began his career as an activist as a teenager. By 23, he was addressing the March on Washington alongside his mentor Martin Luther King Jr. Later in his life, Lewis reflected on the fiery speech he wished to give in his youth at the march. Lewis had planned to describe the Civil Rights March through the South like Sherman burning Atlanta during the Civil War. But before he was able to speak, King and another mentor, A. Philip Randolph, cautioned him to speak for peace. After giving the toned-down version of his speech, Lewis said he had felt defeated, as if he had failed by adopting a passive and peaceful approach. Later in life, after witnessing the effects of nonviolent direct action up close, he became dedicated to the philosophy as the only way to make real change.
I wonder if you would tell us if you think nonviolent means work as well for advancing progress on economic issues as they do on advancing progress on political liberty.
I happen to believe that the way of nonviolence is one of those immutable principles that you cannot deviate from. If you want to have good ends, your means must be good and noble. Somehow, in some way, the end must be caught up in the means. Organize, mobilize at all levels. I believe that.
It is one thing to grapple with a demanding philosophy in a dialogue, or to weigh the implications of different approaches about how to live, when you know you will leave the conversation without any obligation to meet even our most ambitious ideals. It is another to consider a way of life and a philosophy about how to confront power, when the one describing it is a living, breathing manifestation of the most hard-won and demanding aspects of a way of acting. Certainly for my entire life, John Lewis has been the absolute incarnation of the nonviolent philosophy that characterized the movements for civil rights in South Africa, India, and the United States during the 20th century. It's a philosophy that is prized and celebrated, even as it is also criticized for being too passive, too demanding, and too obsessed with the need for suffering. The protests that have so moved our cities in the past months have been wrapped up in a question about this heritage of considering ends only ever in terms of means. The powers that be are so corrupt and so wrong, and the suffering of so many of the most marginalized appear to be consequences that seem completely unacceptable. It is remarkable, then, that John Lewis, even as he passed away in the midst of that new movement toward justice, never wavered from his belief in the importance of nonviolent and non-passive protest. He committed himself in this way not because he relished in suffering, but in the belief that the outcomes of our actions are always and forever wrapped up in how those outcomes came to be. As he put it, somehow, in some way, the ends must be caught up in the means. While I know the urge to meet power with power is great, and the suffering of so many is loud and needs to be answered, I find myself recommitted to Lewis's philosophy. We have all kinds of evidence about what happens when powers are supplanted by other powers, or when violent revolution brings in a new order that eventually turns sour and needs to be overthrown itself. But using Lewis's own logic, I can see that the means of nonviolent resistance cannot be entirely ineffective, because whatever else good that movement has given to the people of this nation, it certainly gave us a John Lewis.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know we will, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will. We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know we will, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Woyaya, 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 Woyaya,
I'd like to share with you the words of Starhawk. We are all longing to go home to some place we've never been, a place half remembered and half envisioned we can only catch glimpses of from time to time. Community. Somewhere there are people to whom we can speak with passion without having the words catch in our throats. Somewhere a circle of hands will open to receive us. Eyes will light up as we enter. Voices will celebrate with us whenever we come into our own power. Community means strength that joins our strength to do the work that needs to be done. Arms that hold us when we falter. A circle of healing. A circle of friends. Someplace we can be free.
Each week, we come together as a people. Together, we share stories, love, aspiration. We also share our bounty in ways that express our religious UU values. May this important ritual of sharing abundance remind us that making our world better is a task best shared.
I don't know if you've had the same difficulty with reading, studying, or engaging with academic philosophy as I have in my own life. I want to know more about it and to really understand the nuances and the meanings of the many schools of thought. But as a casual reader, I have often found the subject to be somewhat impenetrable. Each school of thought is so tied up in its relationship with the schools with it disagrees, and some of the language is so specialized that I've often felt as though I were trying to enter a library surrounded by a moat and guarded by an unfriendly gatekeeper. Yet I know that there's a depth and a richness to a deeper understanding of these schools of philosophy, and I'm determined to storm the castle and eke out as much of an understanding as I'm able, feeble or meek as it may turn out to be. I started this journey with a theory called consequentialism. At its least complex, consequentialism translates roughly to the ends justify the means. It is the current social and political climate in which we are living that made this question garner more interest than a mere statement of the ends justify the means. In part because we as a culture can't seem to agree on which ends we consider to be the best outcome. Like any Hobbesian Leviathan, as a culture we are multitudinous. And according to at least one American, Walt Whitman in this case himself, he is large and contains multitudes. Just think how complicated that's going to get with 328 million of us. There are people in our nation who honestly believe that women should be paid dollar for dollar what men earn at work. And there are people who believe that I should not be allowed to have a husband, let alone be a religious leader. There are those who believe that the government shouldn't waste money on public education, but they're fine spending money other places, which I am not. Like space. Space is huge. Exploration of space is really important, a very worthy cause. I don't know that the Space Force is what we need just yet. And certainly, if we defund public schools, how will we ever get the scientists and engineers required to explore much of anything? If we can't really agree on a unifying end, from the phrase, the end justifies the means, we may have to lay some of that blame on modernity itself. In his book, Justice, What's the Right Thing to Do?, Michael Sanders proposes that there is a division in the very pursuit of justice, of what is right at the end. Sandel suggests that the ancient, and by that he means Aristotelian theories of justice, are based in the question of virtue. Aristotle taught his students that justice meant that people get what they deserve, that they have a right to certain ideas and materials. Because of the structure of Greek society, perhaps not equally distributed, but that each person has the right to what their station in life offers them. To deny them this access, is to deny them justice. Further, Sandel suggests that in modernity, we ask the question of what is just, not from the position of virtue, but from the position of freedom. If I am not free to fill in your own answer here, then there is no justice, and I am being denied access to justice. This idea brought me directly to our own time and the subject of wearing masks in public. It seems to me that there are two camps staked out on the question of wearing masks in public. One camp has embraced the wearing of masks because they believe it is for the public good. The other camp has rejected the wearing of masks because they feel it is an infringement on their individual rights. ancient and modern ideas about justice. The mask camp feels that with what science and medicine is telling us, we should wear masks. Of course, it's a tricky wave to ride because there's an unfolding understanding of this COVID-19 pandemic, and it can change day to day, if not within an hour. But for now, the best evidence shows that any barrier is better than no barrier for transmission. The goal, of course, is no transmission, because people should get what they deserve, a fair and equitable opportunity for health. The no mask camp feels that the exercise of their own will over their own body is what matters most. That justice will be denied if they are compelled to do something with their own bodies they do not consent to do. Whether they believe what scientists and doctors say or not, I don't think there is a monolithic answer to be had there. Choice is their battle cry. I want to veer off for a second to mention the irony I see that a great majority of people who care so deeply about the choices they are allowed for their own bodies do not see an inherent conflict between their wishes for their own unadulterated freedom and those for other people. I want to demand that they explain to me their sudden interest in bodily autonomy and just how far and wide they like to apply their new interest. If we're to carry forward Sandel's model, then those in the modern understanding of justice are those in the second camp who focus more on their individual freedom than what their fellow citizens deserve. Let's just sit with that for a minute. There are people amongst us who care more for their own agenda than for what is good for the whole of our society. We see evidence of this daily in those who cut off others in traffic, in those who would deny medicine and food to others, who they deem as lazy, in those who would emphasize and militarize a political border. We know this is true, and yet it may be for you, as it was for me, a bitter pill to swallow that the philosophical positions they've arrived at are more modern than my own. What has happened along the way from the Enlightenment to our present day in this pursuit of individualism is that we've forgotten that with freedom there is also duty. A duty to a system that is greater than you. This duty means that we must safeguard the others in our culture who've been historically marginalized, who are currently being marginalized, because they deserve justice. They deserve to have what is rightfully theirs, just by virtue of their existence. Our first principle teaches us this. We affirm and promote the inherent dignity and worth of every person. This ties us directly to the Aristotelian idea of justice. A being is owed what they are due. And who do you think ensures this debt is paid? Those people with the most cultural power. It is we men who must stand up for the rights of women for full equality, who must stop sexist jokes in their tracks, who must step up for, but not over, our non-male friends. It is the white person who must place themselves visibly to the aid of people of color and the Black Lives Movement. It is up to those of us who are cisgender to speak up for the gender fluid, the gender queer, the non-binary folks. It is the adults who must stand and protect the children of our world. For in each of these cases, and in many more, the person who is named first in the aforementioned list has more social capital than the person they need to assist. Find yourself. Locate yourself in any of the many questions of social justice. Are you heteronormative? Are you gender normative? Are you neurotypical? Do you have light skin privilege? Do you have a good paying job? Are you the beneficiary of a formal education? Have you benefited from wealth passed generation to generation? In each of these questions, and in so many more, there is a person whose answer does not match your own. Our seventh principle states that we recognize that we are all part of an interdependent web of existence. Each of us, whether we answered yes or no to the questions I just asked you, each of us is connected to others whose answer did not match ours. It is in partnering with those people whose answers are different than ours that true social justice making can take place. I would encourage you to spend more time this week thinking up questions like the ones I asked you a minute ago. Think of more of them than I did. Think of more than I had time to ask you about. When you ask these questions, answer them then, and think about how you can find a partner who isn't the person who answers the same as you. Seek an equal partnership with them, not a patrician hand down, an equal partner. If you're a person who answers no, seek out someone whose answer is yes. Invite your partners to share their story and then share yours. Speak and listen with an open heart. This is how we can discover what Aristotle speaks about when he uses a term like deserves. This is how the work of justice begins. Or you can be more modern. You can think first about your own freedom, ignoring your duty to your fellow citizens. As for me, I think I'll say old-fashioned, at least in this regard.
When you put love out in the world, it travels, and it can touch people and reach people in ways that we never even expected.
Please join me in a moment of meditation and prayer. You may close your eyes if you wish. Imagine the largest body of water you can. Take in its vastness. Try in vain to see the opposite shore. Now, take a deep breath of the fresh air as it comes to you across the lake. Notice the smell of the sweet water. See before you this vast, unending supply of water. The universal love is like that lake. An uncountable number of gallons, cups, and molecules. A supply that is virtually unlimited. By dipping your cup into the fresh, sweet water, by accepting your portion of the universal love, you deprive no one of their own portion. In the real world, away from your imagined lake, water cycles and recycles. It exists in solid, liquid, and gas forms. It exists all around us. The universal love is like this too. It exists all around us also. In forms like kindness and nurturing and care. It is my hope and prayer that you will no longer deny yourself your portion. There is enough love to go around. If you doubt, if you hesitate even for a moment, close your eyes and go back to that vast lake and see all the abundance. Please join me in our Unison Benediction this week. To know is not enough. We must apply. Willing is not enough. We must do. Goethe. Today we've heard firsthand witness stories. We've heard a lot of troubling numbers. We've heard that the troubles of the past aren't all in the past. May you go into the week feeling not hopeless and helpless, but a renewed sense, a renewed commitment to make the world more equitable, just, and fair.